morning and welcome to Atheist Talk on KTNF AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Good morning to all of you joining us locally by radio and streaming online. We appreciate you tuning in. Today is Sunday, March 18th, 2018. A happy belated St. Patrick's Day and St. Gertrude's Day for anybody who's going to be celebrating those. I'm your host, Hertzey Hertz, and I'm here in studio with Maddy Love. And on the phone, we have our awesome guest, Jonathon Tweet, author and game designer. Jonathon Tweet is an atheist organizer in Seattle and a children's science communicator. His career is in geeky game design, which may not be exactly related to atheism, but I'm pretty sure we have a meetup group who's maybe heard of his name or maybe have played one of his games. Probably meets on Thursdays at one of the local gaming shops. This is an open conversation, and we welcome and encourage listener interaction with your phone calls to 952-946-6205, your emails to radio@mnatheists.org, or tweet us at @atheisttalk. The phone number is only available when we are live, but you can always email or tweet whether we're live or you're listening to this in podcast form. Maddy, Jonathon, good morning and welcome to Atheist Talk.
Morning.
Thanks.
All right. Let me move over to the actual document we're going to use. So, Jonathon, you wrote a book called Grandmother Fish.
Yep.
What is this book about? I'm guessing it's about a fish?
Well, it's a trick because it seems like it's about a fish, but really it's about you. So, this is the
I'm a fish?
storybook to teach evolution to preschoolers. And so Grandmother Fish is our ancestor that lived 400 million years ago. And this is a story that demonstrates to even really young children how we're all part of the animal family and that we descended from animals that don't look anything like us, really. So it's a child's first book of evolution.
And of course, the next question is, why did you write this telling children that they're all fish?
Yeah. It's descendants of fish, but yeah. So when I had a daughter, a little preschool daughter, I wanted her to know where we all come from. I wanted her to have the same sort of story that kids in all cultures have always had, a story that tells them about their origins and where we fit into the world and what have you. And since I'm a science geek, I wanted it to be a true story about evolution, and I started writing that book about 20 years ago now, and I just felt like this book ought to exist. There ought to be an origin story for little kids that tells them the truth about where we come from.
I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah, I was flipping through the book this morning, and it was like, oh, this is cute, because I liked how you broke it up between different animals.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to say getting more complex, because that's kind of like a lot of life is complex. But like as we got closer and closer to things that like people would identify as closer to human or whatever. I thought that was brilliant the way you did it. And then the end, how you bring it all together, and you've got like the whole tree and all the animals that we just looked at. It was that was beautiful.
Oh yes,
it really did come together well. And the reason that I did the book on Kickstarter is that when I told people I was doing a kid's book on evolution, their eyes would light up. Mm-hmm. And so I figured, wow, I really have something here. I need to make it really happen.
Well, let's go back a little bit. So you and I were emailing and such, and you had this shared document, and you said it took you 15, 20 years to complete the book.
Yeah.
When did you know it was ready?
Yeah. So I was a professional game designer, and so this was a side project, and I thought it was ready about 10 years in, and someone who's a book professional, children's book professional, sort of told me it wasn't ready. And so I just kept sort of noodling on it until finally in 2013 I had, I was literally soaking in the hot tub, and I had that eureka moment where I realized that what the book needed was to have the children imitate the sounds and the motions of our ancestors. And so originally the book was about, Grandmother Fish had a tail. Do you have a tail? And it sort of was about body parts. It's sort of a natural place to start. And then when I changed that to actions, grandmother fish could wiggle and swim fast. Can you wiggle? Like that, then it became interactive in a way that it never had been before, and it was able to reach children at an even younger age. And so then I knew I had it. Okay, I finally have. After 15 years, I figured out how to do it. And I was going to do a cheap version, maybe a digital version, so I wouldn't even have to pay for printing and, fund it out of my own money. But then when I told people about it, they were so excited about it that I thought it has to be a real thing. It has to be a real hardback book, great art and what have you. And so I went the Kickstarter route to self-publish.
And who's the artist on that? Because that art is absolutely amazing.
Isn't that amazing? So I'm a game designer, so I have contacts. And Karen Lewis, she's local here in Seattle. She was a friend of a friend. Now she's a friend, obviously. But she is a children's science illustrator. And when she heard about this project, she knew she would be perfect for it. And she was. She can make these animals look realistic enough that, like, a paleontologist can tell that grandmother fish is an Ischnacanthus or whatever. But it has sort of a cheeky smile and, appeals to children. And so she can really make that balance. And she helped me with the words and the structure of the story. And she brought up the cute factor a lot. And
it is freaking adorable.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it turned out so much better because she was working on the project. Like, I asked her to draw grandmother ape, and she drew grandmother ape plus a baby ape. Well, that's twice as good, 4 times as good, right? So, yeah, I'm very happy. She's the one that sort of twisted my arm about putting the evolutionary tree in the back, right? This big, full-color 2-page spread of, like, the entire tree of life, simplified for kids. I didn't want to do it because I said it was going to be a ton of work. And she wanted to do it because she said kids would just love it. And we were both right. It was a ton of work. The kids really love it.
So are you guys ever thinking about maybe putting, like, together some grandmother fish toys?
So, those options are, we're going to pursue them once the book sort of really takes off, I would say. Like, at this point, it's well beloved in sort of the smaller circles of people who know about it, but there just aren't a lot of parents going to stores looking for evolution books for their kids yet.
Yeah.
So
marketing for something like this is one of those where it's like I don't think people necessarily know that they need/want this until all of a sudden it's put in front of them and they're like, oh, because admittedly,
that's exactly right.
Oh yeah, I have a nibbling, my sister's child. Yeah. And, when I told her, I'm like, oh, by the way, I need you or your husband to read this to the nibbling. And it was like, oh my God, after they were done, they're like, this book is awesome. I want this book. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's great because
really
you get it.
To it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, growing up, I had I remember having a kid's Bible that was illustrated very much like this. And like my parents, just having it in the house and just reading it, I was exposed to these ideas. And I could see how having a book like this in the house, just kids reading it, they're seeing it, they're being exposed to ideas. I mean, I know we shouldn't try to indoctrinate people, but at the same time, I think it is good to help give them a vaccination of truth.
I was going to say, and I think there's a major difference between indoctrinating them into something that doesn't have any provable behind it.
I agree.
And having that science. I love the factor that you were talking about how the illustrator actually put it so that these are the actual animals in the family tree. I'm like, that is so cool. I didn't even realize that because I'm not that science nerdy.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm a super science geek, so we went to a ton of trouble to get the science really right.
Awesome.
And I had to learn a lot of stuff about our past and our family tree and whatever in order to get it all correct.
So you said that you did this on Kickstarter. How did that work?
It turned out really well. We raised over $36,000, and we were able to fund, a modest print run of a self-published book. And the other thing about Kickstarter is by telling my friends and my colleagues and my contacts and whatever that I'm going to put this book on Kickstarter, it makes other people want to pitch in because they see that I'm putting myself up there and I'm taking this risk and I'm trying to make something happen. So I really wound up getting a ton of support and really good advice from writer friends and other, creative friends. Like I said, as a game designer, I've got lots of creative people in my circle. And so I was able to get help from the National Center for Science Education and sort of all sorts of resources. People online were helping me with that family tree. And sort of because I was doing it in public, like here's this project that I'm trying to accomplish, it sort of inspired people to glom on and help, and it made the book way better than it would have been if I had just sort of worked on it on my own.
So I noticed that at the beginning, at the front cover and the back cover, there's all these names and such. Are each of those names of people who kickstarted? Yes, those are our backers. Yeah. Oh wow! I wish I had seen this when you were doing it.
Right? Yeah.
Well, please stay with us through the break. We'll return to Atheist Talk with Maddy Love and Jonathon Tweet. I'm Hertz, and you're listening to AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Welcome back to AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. You're tuned in to Atheist Talk, and I'm your host, Hertz. In studio today with Maddy Love and our guest, Jonathon Tweet. Before we get back, however, I want to remind everyone listening live that immediately following this program, you can listen to American Atheist Viewpoint, an official production from American Atheists. Please note, you can always catch American Atheist Viewpoint by subscribing to the podcast version in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or the podcast player of your choice. As for the here and now, if you'd like to get involved in the conversation with Maddy Love this morning and Jonathon Tweet, you can call us at 952-946-6205, email us at radio@mnatheist.org, or tweet us at Atheist Talk, or join us on our Facebook page, Atheist Talk. Maddy, Jonathon, welcome back.
Thanks.
All right, so when we left off, we had just finished your Kickstarter. You'd done the self-publishing, and I've noticed now that you seem to have a professional publisher.
That's right, yeah. So we self-published in 2015, and then somebody wrote, Barbara J. King wrote a blog post on an NPR blog, their Cosmos and Culture blog, 13.7. And so she picked up some of the more sort of academic reviews that had occurred online, and she wrote a really nice article about how young should a child be when you start talking to them about evolution. And then that article went viral, and my little print one sold out. And so that was great. I wish I had printed twice as many. And then based on the strength of that, an agent got in touch with us. We signed on with that agent. He sent our, complete manuscript with art and everything, the PDF out to a bunch of publishers. And pretty soon we had 3 publishers all bidding for the rights. Ooh, and we went with Macmillan.
Was there a bidding war?
A little bit of a bidding war.
Oh, that must have felt good.
It's really nice when major publishers are coming to you, telling you how much they want your book. One publisher said it would be like a dream come true to publish that book because he wanted to do an evolution book for a long time. He could never figure out how to get it done.
Oh, that is so awesome. And like I said, my nibbling just absolutely adored it. I mean, he was doing all of the movements and crawling around the floor. It was so cute. But
right. That's how sort of language started, is as pantomime and mimicry and what have you. Like that's very natural for little kids. So that mimicry stuff, like crawling like a reptile, it's just golden. It works way better than I ever even imagined.
So now, obviously, since this is a book aimed at children and has to do with evolution, I'm guessing that you have creationists who are giving you grief about this.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, I'm on social media. I'm on Twitter and Facebook, and so it's really easy for creationists to sort of get hold of me and say mean things to me. I try not to respond to negativity with negativity, and so my go-to response is to tell these people that I support their First Amendment right to teach kids what they believe, and I expect them to support my constitutional right to teach kids what I believe. That puts them in a real quandary because they, at least on paper, they respect the Constitution and America and whatever, and they don't like being told that they're violating the spirit of the First Amendment or what have you. That tends to deflate them a little bit.
I'm actually on your website right now looking at the religious meme that Grandmother Fish was incorporated into.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta see this.
They also did a video of me and PZ Myers. PZ Myers is another evolution promoter with a big blog.
Oh yes, he's actually in Minnesota, and so we've had him as a guest before.
Yeah, he was one of the very first big boosters for Grandmother Fish. I really appreciate that. And he and I are working together at the Science Museum of Minnesota, helping them with their new evolution program.
You should just see we're both like, oh my God!
That's going to be cool.
I love going to the Science Museum, and now it's going to be even better because it's like, oh yeah, I totally know two people who helped with that.
Well, actually, we know three because it looks like Greg Layden also helped with this book.
My God. Okay, so what we really need to do is so we need to be in contact, and when this goes up, we can get Greg and PZ and you all in the same, relative room.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Yeah, Science Museum of Minnesota has some really ambitious plans for teaching evolution. Oh, and yeah. They looped me in because obviously Grandmother Fish shows that, I've got a knack for figuring out how to take a complicated topic and make it accessible.
Yeah. Have you ever been to the Science Museum of Minnesota?
Well, so they had me out there in February, and so it's amazing.
Oh yeah, my favorite part is a permanent exhibit in there that has all the different quackery from all over the place.
That's totally fun.
And I just love the factor because I know it's a little bit older, for the kids who are a little bit older, but it does teach that, when does something get too many promises? Right. How to critically think about that kind of stuff. Anyways, we got to get back to your book.
Okay.
I could totally talk about the Science Museum forever.
I have a question. I'm looking at your website and I see all these different places I can order it from: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart.
Yeah.
What place? So if I'm a fan and want to make sure you get the biggest cut of the little bit of money that I'm going to spend, what's the best place for people to order this book?
Yeah. So call around to all the friendly local bookstores. Do you have a Big Wild Rumpus? Did I get that name right?
That sounds familiar, maybe. No?
I live in the cities, and all my local bookstores are Barnes & Noble.
Well, isn't there a Red Balloon, though, on Grand?
Call around to any brick-and-mortar bookstore, ask if they have it, and, buy it from some... that is the best way for them to learn that people want this book. Call them up, ask for it, go buy it from there. That's the thing that's going to help us the most.
That's good advice.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, and actually, tell those stores that if they start carrying it, they should post it on some social media spots.
Yeah.
Because I'm
so the biggest thing that people can do to help me is to share posts on Twitter or Facebook. Grandmother Fish has a page on both of those, and that seems to be the most effective way to sort of help spread the word.
Is Grandmother Fish also kind of like Sue the T-Rex? Does she tweet?
I tweet as the author of Grandmother Fish. I don't tweet as Grandmother Fish.
Okay. I can get that. I can see that. It's a little harder to tweet to 3-year-olds.
Yeah. Also, fish are not as interesting as a T-Rex.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
A fish is not as interesting as a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Neither are puppies, and yet Paw Patrol is all my 3-year-old grandson wants to watch.
Oh, yeah. It makes me glad that my nibbling lives out in Washington State, because then I don't have to listen to it all the time. So what's your favorite line that you've gotten from a creationist?
Favorite line I've gotten from a creationist.
Sure, ask him a question right before we go to break. What a great question.
If nothing else, he can think about it while we're on break.
There you go.
All right. Well, with that, we'll return with Maddie Love and Jonathon Tweet right after the break. Stay with us, and I'm Hertzey Hertz, and you're listening to Atheist Talk on KTNF AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Thank you for tuning in to Atheist Talk on AM 950 KTNF. I'm your host, Hertzey Hertz, and in studio we have Maddie Love, and on the phone we have Jonathon Tweet, and I'd say we're having a fascinating conversation. But before we continue this conversation, which will be our final segment with Maddie and Jonathon, there's a bit of housekeeping I need to attend to. Atheist Talk is produced with the funding from Minnesota Atheists and Cucumbers Restaurant in Edina, Minnesota. Please consider visiting our sponsors, and if you do, let them know that you appreciate their support of Atheist Talk. If you'd like to advertise on the program and help keep us on the air, please contact us at radio@mnatheist.org. I also want to note our dedicated group of volunteers and the generous donations of you, our listeners. You help keep Atheist Talk on the air and in podcast form. I also want to note our donors of the week are Cindy, Eric, and August, and our new patrons, Carissa and Larry. Thank you so much. And if you're able to help with a donation, please consider doing so at our Radio Fund page or at our Patreon at www.patreon.com/atheisttalk. Minnesota Atheist is a 501c3 tax-deductible organization. We could not do this show without you, and we deeply appreciate your support. No, seriously. Very appreciative. Music for Minnesota Atheists is by composer and member Brent Michael Davis and is used with permission. Please note all opinions are the guests and hosts only and do not necessarily reflect those of Minnesota Atheists as an organization. As always, check out the Minnesota Atheist website for podcasts of previous programs. You can browse articles, book reviews, and peruse the calendar for upcoming events, like Thursday nights at Fantasy Flight, where we do game night. You can sign up for Atheist Weekly email, which will give you a link to all of the upcoming events. It's a great way to stay connected with your community. If you enjoy the show and all that Minnesota Atheists has to offer, please consider becoming a member of Minnesota Atheists while you're on the website. Membership has some great perks. Check out the website for how and what. With all this relevant and useful information out of the way, let's get back to our conversation with Maddie and Jonathon.
Hey.
Hello.
So, I've got an answer.
Woohoo!
For two answers. So, the sort of my... that most of the creationists don't have anything interesting to say. You might be surprised to hear that. I did get Ken Ham to refer to me as aggressive, and that was nice. But I think the best comment I got was from a creationist who said, there are already 1 million preschool books on evolution for kids. Why do we need another one?
Could this creationist name like one?
Yeah.
Besides
there's none.
yours?
Yeah, there were like at some point I went and looked to see. I wanted to see what the other evolution books for preschoolers were like, so I could compare the book that I was working on. Well, there's no other preschool books for kids on evolution. I went to the preschool science section in a bookstore. There's no preschool science section.
No. Dang it, Google, you have destroyed another argument. My arguments are my favorite arguments are the ones that can be disproven with a cursory Google search.
Right, exactly.
So at the beginning of the show, we noted that you are a game designer. And so what games have you designed? So
I work on tabletop games, so it's mostly role-playing games with, pencils and dice and what have you. The most played game that I did was the 3rd edition of Dungeons and Dragons back in 2000. I was the lead designer on that. And that game reinvigorated the Dungeons and Dragons brand and did a lot to reinvigorate, role-playing games. And it's still like that version of Dungeons and Dragons that I was the lead on all those years ago is still being played pretty faithfully by people who play Pathfinder or people who just still use the old third and 3.5 books.
Nice.
So that's my big thing in terms of commercial success and name recognition. I've done a bunch of role-playing games, and they're all very different from each other. And they, so Ars Magica and Everway and Over the Edge, and they're very, they sort of push story and they push character more than you see in a lot of sort of their contemporaries. And in fact, the Over the Edge role-playing game from '92, that was a big sort of a big inspiration for a lot of people who are big names now in role-playing games, like Jason Morningstar and Vincent Baker and Ron Edwards. So that Over the Edge was like a labor of love project, sort of like Grandmother Fish was, and came at games from a different way, sort of like Grandmother Fish comes at evolution from a different way, and really had a big influence on people doing what are now called, the indie role-playing games.
Nice. I might have to get the list of the other ones. I got Over the Edge. I am a role player. I did not rate. I did a little bit of 3.5, and then admittedly did a lot of 4.0. I liked it. But now I'm at 5th edition right now.
Okay, well, 13th Age is maybe something you should take a look at. It is a version of Dungeons & Dragons, basically using the open game license. I wrote it with Rob Hainso. I was the lead designer on 3rd, and he was the lead designer on 4th. And 13th Age is our version of the game, what we would do if we didn't have corporate masters to be beholden to.
Oh, I will totally be taking a look at that.
So it's more story, more exciting combat, more creativity, and you can pull all sorts of good stuff out of it and drop it right into a 5th edition campaign.
Score. So you also mentioned at either on the show or in one of our earlier conversations that you have a game in production about evolution.
That's right. It's called Clades, and a clade is a complete branch of the evolutionary family tree. So this is a card game where players make matches of cards, 3 cards that go together, and one of the ways that they match those cards is according to their evolutionary relationships. So it just teaches kids how to sort of sort animals according to common descent, according to which ones have the most recent common ancestor. So it also teaches kids that reptiles and birds go together into one same group called the sauropsids.
Interesting. So Grandmother Fish is for like the 3-year-olds and such, and this might be more for like the 10-year-olds.
Well, this is ages 6 and above.
Oh, nice.
But you're competing against the other players to be the first to spot the matches on the cards that are on the table. So the older the other players are, the more difficult the game becomes. Like, it scales up pretty well. I know a middle school teacher of biology, and he said that Clades really elicited from the students, these sort of deep questions that they wouldn't ask if they were just taking in the material passively. But because you have to sort of understand how these animals relate in order to match them, it prompts all sorts of questions. And I've seen that too among people who are looking at the cards. Like, what about bats? Are bats mammals? Yes, bats are mammals. That sort of thing. And also just like, what's more related to what, and what have you. Yeah.
It sounds like a cross between Go Fish and a game that we call Speed up here, or California Speed, where like you have to like. And obviously I haven't played your game yet, but are you like competing? Like whoever can pick up the card the fastest is able to get it?
Yes. So it's a lot like Set, where you have a bunch of cards laid out on the table, and the trick is to spot which of them go together into a match.
Okay.
And so you're never sitting around waiting for someone else to take their turn. Everybody's sort of going at the same time. And that makes it good for large groups. It makes it good for kids. And then it's just a bunch of cards that have pictures of animals on them. And they're Karen Lewis's art, so they're Karen Lewis's cute animals. And one of the tricks, part of the whole point of the game is one of the animals pictured there is a human. And you get to see that, humans are sort of closely related to rodents and to rabbits. And just putting a human in that context as one more animal that's related to all the other animals, that's sort of a big part of the subliminal message. And then we raised enough money on Kickstarter for that game that not only do we have Clades, but we also have Clades Prehistoric, which is basically the same game, but it's all prehistoric animals, so dinosaurs and pterosaurs, and sea scorpions, giant millipedes, all sorts of stuff.
Oh, I have a feeling that is going to go over very, very well with those who like the giant big bugs.
Yes, yeah. And so actually, those games are both being published right there in Minnesota by Atlas Games.
I love Minnesota.
We have such
Minnesota's great.
You
should join us, Jonathan. You should move here.
No, as somebody from Washington State, stay where you are. We're coming to you.
I've lived in Minnesota, and I'm staying in Seattle. But I love to visit the Twin Cities. Really, I had a really great visit there when I came in to work at the Science Museum of Minnesota. I had a great visit at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis. They started as a Charles Darwin reading club like over 100 years ago, back in the 80s or something. So they were a Charles Darwin reading club before they were a Unitarian congregation, and then they were apparently the center of congregational humanism. So they did a big Darwin Day event, and I read the book to the whole congregation. It was really great.
Nice. So do you have any other evolution communication projects going on? Anything you can give us some details?
So Science Museum of Minnesota is doing a really audacious 3-part program, and they're planning on not just teaching evolution to middle schoolers, but figuring out how to teach difficult topics to middle schoolers in general, or to museum goers in general. So it's very ambitious. They're going to try lots of different things. They're going to test lots of different things, have multiple kinds of activities. Seems really great. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then Clades and Clades Prehistoric have just about hit the warehouse, so they're going to be probably on store shelves early in April, maybe by the end of March. And then Karen and I have a concept for an even simpler sort of evolution-themed game for our evolution-themed book for kids. So we'll see.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And if our listeners wanted to find you, where can they find you?
So Facebook and Twitter are great. I'm on Google+, but not many people are. So Facebook and Twitter, I always tell people, Grandmother Fish is there. And you can find out all the stuff that I'm doing in terms of evolution. And then I'm also there as Jonathon Tweet. On Twitter, I'm Jonathon M. as a Michael Tweet. And there's where I talk about games and politics and what have you. Those are all good.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share with us quick?
No, I mean, I'm really happy to talk to people in Minnesota. I think that, my family all has, our relatives are there. It's sort of where my blood is from. And I grew up in Illinois, but I went to school in Minnesota and lived in Minneapolis for a while. And so, I think that, the Minnesota population is sort of literate and, it reminds me a lot of the Seattle area population. And so, I think I'm hoping that my book will find a great reception there.
Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. Have a good day.
You bet. Thanks.